How are we all going, guys? You're back with Jono for another quick math lesson. Today we're going to look at how to expand binomial products, so two brackets next to each other, but when we've got surds involved, it changes a couple of rules. So just before we get started, we've got to make sure that we're on top of how to multiply surds in three different ways. The first one is probably the most pivotal. We need to know that a surd multiplied by itself, by the exact same kind, just means that we lose the square root sign. So the square root of 3 multiplied by the square root of 3 is just equal to 3. So there's not that much to it, but it's a really important rule in order to simplify these expansions. The second thing we need to be on top of is the multiplication law that occurs with surds. So if we have two different surds, let's say we've got root 6 and root 5, we can just combine these under the same square root. So this here, root 6 times root 5, is exactly the same as root 30. So we can combine them incredibly quickly. If you don't believe me, just check on your calculator and you'll see that it gives the exact same number. Finally, if we have a whole integer, so 3 multiplied by a surd, it's very similar to algebra. All we have to do is, instead of writing the multiplication sign in there, if there's a whole number and a surd right next to each other, we assume that multiplication is occurring, so we just write them next to each other. So in order to complete these binomial expansions, we just have to use FOIL. If you haven't used FOIL, don't stress. We just have to make sure that everything at the start is multiplied by everything in the back, and we're good to go. So for this one here, I'm going to multiply the first terms, so root 3 and 2, and that just becomes 2 root 3. That's all I have to do. Then I'm doing my two outside terms, so root 3 times root 5, which is equal to plus root 15, plus the inside ones, root 5 multiplied by 2 is 2 root 5, and finally, root 5 multiplied by root 5 is just 5. Now, because I don't have any like surds in this equation, I can't simplify it any further, and that is my final answer. So this is usually just a 2-mark question, all right? If we just have to expand and there's no simplifying, it's not too difficult. But if it's worth 3 or 4 marks, just make sure that there isn't an easy simplification that you need to do with addition or subtraction, or perhaps changing one of the surds with our perfect squares in order to then add and subtract it. So in this example, this would be a 3-mark question because we do have to do a simplification at the end. So I'm going to rewrite this one out as root 6 plus root 7, root 6 plus root 7, and then I'm going to FOIL it again. So root 6 times root 6 is just 6, plus 6 times root 7 is root 42. 7 times root 6 is again plus root 42. And then root 7 times root 7 is just 7. So the 6 and 7 I can put together because they're just whole numbers. So that becomes 13. And I have two groups of root 42. So I can just write 2 42. Just with this, make sure that root 42 doesn't have any square factors underneath, just to make sure that you have simplified this surd fully. Last type here is a special type, and the whole next video is actually going to be dedicated to this. This is something that is going to be really helpful if we move on to any type of higher maths. So here I'm just going to expand it like normal, but it's going to have an answer that doesn't seem like it relates to anything in the initial question. So 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. 2 multiplied by root 3 is plus 2 root 3. Then my inside ones, negative root 3 multiplied by 2 is minus 2 root 3. And then finally, minus root 3 times root 3 is equal to minus 3. What's really important to note here is that these middle terms here, plus 2 root 3 and minus 2 root 3, they just cancel each other out. If you have plus and minus the same thing, it's equal to 0. So we can get rid of this completely. Then all we've got to do is put those like terms together. So 4 minus 3 is equal to 1. And that's the answer. Even though it doesn't have a surd in it, even though it looks completely different to our question that started, with this cancellation of the middle terms, a whole number is all we're going to be left with. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you guys later. Just a quick reminder, there are some free worksheets linked in the description below, as well as the notes from this video. If you've got a second, please like, comment, and subscribe to Quick Math for more content every day. Thanks so much. Have a good one.